Good day, dear students. We are now here to learn a different aspect of our lessons. Apart from the prose, poetry and grammar, we are to deal something which is very important to our day-to-day life. Hey, do you know something? There was a lady living next house. She was, Yes, I was trying to gossip to you, but due to lack of time, let's go into the lesson. Once upon a time, there lived a king long, long ago, and the king had many children, and it was, and so on and on. Hey, you are right. You found out. It is storytelling. You would have come across the lesson, The Accidental Tourist, where the author tells many things about what and all happened in his day-to-day life when he was on a travel, on a tour, and in the lesson itself states as The Accidental Tourist. So here is the narration. So you find three different ways of communicating to the people or to your friends as such. The first thing was a gossip, just leave that alone. The second was storytelling, and the next was narration. Okay, now just tell me, what is narration or narrative writing? What do you mean by narrative writing when there is storytelling also? Narrative writing is nothing but there is so many influences of the story in narration as such we see. So, a story can be changed into a comedy or a thriller as such. Here, if you see, we can take it for example, the Titanic. You would have all watched the movie Titanic, and there we have seen the main concept of the story was about the ship. But the narrator or the narration was about a love affair which was taking place inside the ship. And this is what is called as narration. So what is narrative writing? We are to deal about narrative writing as such. It attempts to carry meaning for a particular message or something and why and how things had happened. It is nothing but it is a contrast way of looking into the world, and there you find a different aspect, and this is what is called as narration. So to explain it in a better way, it is nothing but the story is pearls and narration is nothing but the string of pearls all joined together. Now let us move into what is narrative writing as such. Narrative writing is nothing but which is a concept to understand the meaning of the whole story which has to be explained thereof. So it is a specific elements worked out together to interest not only the author himself but the readers as well. This type of narrative writing pleases both the readers as well as the narrator, and sometimes he or she is a part of this story as if it is directly applied to that particular person. The story has a beginning, a middle, and an ending too. Now, it has the setting itself in the narrative writing is divided into two parts. What are the two parts? The first part, which is for the author himself, and the second part is for the reader. The first setting is where, when, and what happens to the narration. And the second thing is the readers visualize what is happening when they are reading the narration, and the characters are there. They also visualize each and every character which is there, and the different sections of the scenes are brought about in this setting. The next thing we see is the style of the narrative writing. It should be in the figurative languages. The dialogue should be unique and never ever been a repetitive one which has been attempted by any others as such. Here you can use your own style, techniques, and your own ideas are applicable to this form of session. Now, what is style? What is the whole setting all about? Here we see that the conflicts are set up here. That is, if you understand a lesson, for example, the accidental tourist as such, you will find the conflict of the author on himself. This is what is the setting of the whole thing of the narrative writing. Here we see person and self, or the person and person. That is, person and himself. It is nothing but something about the narrator himself. He says about himself. And the person to person, another unknown person. A person to the society at large on the whole, and the person to the machine or the technology, and person to that of nature. So there is a correspondence between each and everything, and this is what is the whole style of narrative writing. So what is the theme of narrative writing? A message is revealed, and directly, if it is revealed directly as such as a fable, you have a moral at the end of the story. So we understand there is a beginning of the story, there are characters, and the characters have a theme, and the theme comes to the end, and in the end, towards the end, you find a moral to that of the narrative writing or narrative story, whatever it is. Here, suppose if it is told indirectly, it is said, the message that you have to decide the message. You, in the sense, the readers has to decide the message, and there can be more than one theme in the whole setup. WH questions and H questions are the main point here to be noted. When you do a narrative writing, you have to take into consideration where, what, who, when, and how. These questions have to be looked into, and then you have to go into that of the narrative session. Now, planning a narrative, brainstorm your ideas. Brainstorm your ideas are nothing but get into vivid ideas. Many thoughts can flow into your waves when you look at the surroundings around you, and you can watch over people, and you cannot be monotonous stating over a particular thing only, but the narration should be as such which interests the readers. This should not take too long, and it should not be too short too, and the ideas can be added as and when you go through these sessions. Now, you have this flow chart which tells you the narration should have a theme. When the narration has a theme, there's a characters. The characters are there. The setting should have a theme, and then you have the plot, the crisis. What is the plot about? And then the crisis. The crisis should end up with a solution as such. So this is the flow chart which represents what is narrative writing as such. To conclude, be careful with the dialogue. Whatever dialogue you are to write, be careful what are the characters which are present there, and what are you about to write there. All good writings begins with the planner, and then to get high scores or attraction, spelling and grammar are important. But the writing content is more important. Sometimes it can be a colloquial local language which has to be used there. Then don't look into the grammar part of it. You have to write that colloquial, that local language which will interest the readers themselves. The organization of the points or the organization of the characters, the passages is very important to be noted. Can use similes or any figures of speech which is sensible and which is very much useful to that of the context which we are to apply to. Here is a format which how to develop a proverb into a story or a paragraph. So the title which has been given is Action Speaks Louder Than Words, this is an example which has been written down, so which states about the narrative writing as such. Here we have seen the glimpses of a short paragraph of narrative writing which has been written down. It is just a story which tells about Sita, who was very helpful, and thus how her helping tendency was seen by her teacher, and she was much appreciated by then, and then the whole thing happens. So we have an example of this narrative narrating in front of us. So this is not a conclusion of the narrative writing as such. This is how you are to attempt narrative writing. And the next part of it, as we are about to deal, is nothing but curriculum vitae or biodata, or as you say, resume as such. Here at this juncture, I would just like to tell you a curriculum vitae or a resume or a biodata is as important as you wish to have a job. Job is necessary for the living of every man. But do you know how many of them lose their jobs when there is no proper curriculum vitae as such? Just for the sake of fun, let me tell you, there are some resumes where you find the picture of the person, the photograph is being stuck on the resume in the first page itself. Do you think this is the correct gesture? To be more clear, as psychologists say, when a person looks into the picture of a person, his attitude changes rather than looking into that of the resume which he had presented for the purpose of the job. Why do you want to stick your picture there? So in order to have a proper kind of resume presentation or a curriculum vitae which has to be presented, a proper procedure has to be followed. So you have to do proofreading, and sometimes there are type mistakes which are there, which we just ignore lethargically. Sometimes it so happens that we just copy down and paste another person's curriculum or another person's resume, or sometimes it so happens that we had applied for another job. We had applied for a sales representative job, and now to apply for the post of a nurse, what he does is he just copies down and pastes it and sends it as sales representative. Here, what happens is, we sometimes, it's funny and we laugh about, but actually, it ruins our process of our flourishing in our life, flourishment in our life. Just look into the aspects of a proper biodata, a curriculum vitae, which can be helpful for your progress of your life. If we look into these aspects, what is curriculum vitae then? It is nothing but a short description of the person's educational and professional history. So when do you use it? When you apply for a job, when you want it for other purposes, when it is necessary and very important for your life, you do apply for these things. How long should a curriculum vitae should be? Should it be pages and pages and pages together? Who has time to read all these things? So, it should not be very short and not longer than 2 pages. What are the requirements? You need all personal information should be there, your work experiences, and then your education, skills, and interests should also be there. How to create impact while writing a curriculum vitae? It should be short, simple, easy to understand. It should be in the logical order. Short sentences should be applied. No spelling mistakes should be there. No grammar mistakes should be there. The short sentences should be apt for the post applied thereof. Why is this necessary? Be short and frank and up to the point. At this juncture, let us make this class which is going on very serious. We'll make it something interesting. There was one person who happened to apply a resume, and what she did was, she wanted to apply for the post of a cook in a particular firm. So in order to apply for there were extracurricular activities which were asked by them, or what were the talents which was to be specified in the curriculum vitae. She, in a gesture of excitement, or she wanted to be very proud of herself. She had so many awards and rewards. She wrote 2 or 3 pages about awards and rewards. And the final touch was there when she wrote, I make pizzas very likely which are tasted by all and loved by all. She could have stopped with that. But what was the thing was, in the curriculum vitae, she wrote about the procedures and what were the different things which she had followed while making a pizza. She wrote, step 1, I batter. Step 2, I put this. Step 3, I do this, and all things. Now, something which is laughable, but something thoughtful. Is it necessary for the person there to sit down and look into your resume or your curriculum vitae to see all these things which are unnecessary for a person, which is not required, or which is not a requirement which is needed for a firm or a company? Failure to plan is planning to fail. A beautiful sentence which can be said. Failure to plan. You plan out your curriculum vitae, or you're planning to fail in your whole process. Okay, what is planning outlay of the curriculum vitae? Personal details as such. It can be divided into the several sections. First, we'll see the sections and then go into what has to be filled up in these sections. First one is the name, date of birth, gender, marital status, languages known. All these are called as the personal details. And the next we see is that it should also be noted about the education. Education should be entered in chronological order. What do you mean by chronological order? From the last studied to the next on process. It can be going on. So what was your last study? So that should be entered. The degree should be entered as such. Work experience is nothing but whether it was a part-time work experience or summertime you just worked out, or voluntary services which you had done should be mentioned. And other things as skills and interest, that is software and hardware skills, and extracurricular activities which you have done can also be mentioned there. Then it is important to note about your strength. That is, you have been hardworking, or you are a person of a positive approach, and what you think your strengths are should be also made note of. references, any two references for the sake of verification or credentials should also be mentioned in that of the curriculum vitae. Now here you can see a glimpse of a filled up curriculum vitae as such. The name, father's name, postal address, nationality, age, date of birth, sex, educational qualification, then comes experience, and then we have extracurricular activities which has been sought out. Then we have the profile. Profile is nothing but what are you better off. Then we have the prizes and awards, salary expected, and references which has to be given. And towards the end of the curriculum vitae, we specify the declaration which is given, date and station, and you end up the whole part of your letter which ends up. Now we move on to the third part of the session of today, filling in forms. Hey, can you please fill up this form for me? I don't know what is here in this form. I just can't understand. Just fill it up and give it to me. Whenever we go into a college or even in the railway station or anywhere, even to the post office, we just go on inquiring people just how to fill in these forms. In order to be of more helpful and of use to you, these forms are very simple to be filled up, and it is in your lesson behind the textbook. Here, the filling of the forms are nothing but printed documents which are used for variety of purposes, which provides information, which whatever information is required for the purpose, it provides thereof to that of the enterprises, agencies, or to the institutions, which is in an orderly manner and easy to read format for whatever occasions it has been specified thereof. So steps to fill up forms. What we have to do? There are various steps which have to be which are specified in our textbook. To rush up with whatever has been specified, take a photocopy of the original form, fill it up with a pencil as a rough copy in your regional language, and with the capital letters is a must. Full address with PIN code should be there. It should be neat and legible. No overwriting. When you're doing it in the fair, no overwriting should be there, and only details which are required thereof should be filled there. Sign in, and then the date of applying also should be specified. Double check it again and again whether you have written down all the requirements. Take a photocopy of the form which you have filled for future references. Here you see the various forms which are already in your textbook, but we just go through what are the things which has been specified as such. Here you find a bank challan which has been given to you, and what are the things to be filled up in that of the bank challan. So you have the name should be written down in block letters, and then you have the address which has to be written down in block letters, and then the fees amount, date, and mobile number, specifically applicant signature. So there, if you read it out and see, for bank use only also has been specified. So be careful reading all these things at random. Don't run into a form to fill up all these things with the pen. Look into the detail to be filled in by the applicant has been specified in the blank challan as such. And now the next form that we see here is that of the railway reservation or the cancellation requisition form. So look into the form carefully, and there you find the train number and the name of the train, class, which class you want to travel, the station from, and boarding at. So from which place you want to travel, the station from and to has been given, you are going to board at some other place. Be sure that whatever form you are filling in should be in capital letters and not in small letters. So most probably fill in the forms in English with capital letters. Then you have the sex, which is male M, female F. So specify M or F there. Then you have the age, and then if concession, authority, travel, and so on. The next form we move on is nothing but the Railway Recruitment Board, where you attempt to write down an application for the post of after you have completed your degree. So we had gone through all these various forms which are thereof. These various forms which are specified as such, which also tells us that each and every forms, there should be no mistakes as such. We just rush up with whatever we had seen, the narrative writing, the curriculum vitae, or filling up of forms. In the narrative writing, we have an example like the despair gives courage to the coward. The second one, a bad workman blames his tool. And the third, it can be like given as develop hints into a paragraph, like what you sow, you reap. So you have to write it down in a paragraph. So in the curriculum vitae, you have to prepare a biodata fulfilling conditions for a qualified nurse. Or the next example will be prepare a biodata for a qualified teacher required for a residential schools. So for filling up of forms, you can just have a kind of training for yourself, like filling up the forms of a post office saving, cancellation of reservation forms. These can be brought by you and filled up by yourself. So you can here for the examination point of view, they give like questions like describe the process of opening and backing a bank account, or describe the process of sending an email as such. So winding up all these things, we can see that these activities are all of necessary to day-to-day activity in your life. So plan your life like you will live forever, and live your life like you will die the next day. Sing like no one's listening. Love like you've never been hurt. Dance like nobody is watching. And live like it's heaven on earth. Happy smiles. Thank you.